On the album, there's the Stones, there's Eric Clapton, there's Chuck Leavell, there's Matt Clifford, and Jim Keltner. We'll probably do another song from that album. I'm doing my best, so I'm going to get out there. That Desert Trip stage is so big.
Mick Jagger was never a symbol crafted by Broadway stages or music academies. He's the product of raw desire, defiance, drugs, rebellion, and hip thrusts that once sent society into a panic. In the world of rock and roll, where rebels often burn out too fast, too soon, too bright, Jagger is the only one still burning, not because he's stronger, but because he never considered extinguishing the fire. With those iconic thick lips, delirious dance moves, a voice that's far from beautiful, yet utterly haunting, and a gaze that knows it's the center of the universe, he has ruled the stage for over 60 years, without asking anyone's permission. From the 1960s London to American stadiums in the digital age, Mick Jagger has never stopped. Not when he was arrested, not when he was cursed at, not when betrayed, not even when his heart required emergency surgery at 75. He's gone from the classrooms of the London School of Economics to jail cells, from being branded a moral threat to youth to being knighted by the Queen. Condemned for his hedonistic lifestyle, devastated by a lover's suicide from depression, denounced by his own bandmates as a dictator, and yet he still takes the stage, smiling, dancing, making tens of thousands of young people scream lyrics written before their parents had even met. You may or may not be a Stones fan. Maybe you only know Moves Like Jagger as a Maroon 5 hit. But if you've ever found yourself hypnotized by a man screaming under dim lights, in tight clothes, with a face that's equal parts arrogance and heartbreak, then you already know why the world hasn't let go of Mick Jagger. How does someone once prosecuted by governments, abandoned by churches, and lashed by his own band become an enduring icon of pop culture? Join Rock Discovery as we trace that journey, from a well-mannered boy in Dartford to the ringleader who summoned an entire generation to revolt. And if there's still a drop of fire left in your veins, maybe you'll understand why Mick Jagger never stopped, and never plans to. Early life. No one expected Mick Jagger to become the embodiment of rebellion. There was no poverty, no domestic violence, no alcoholic father, depressed mother, or abandoned childhood, unlike many other rock legends. He was born on July 26, 1943, in the thick of World War II, in the quiet town of Dartford, Kent, inside a red brick house, peaceful, proper, the epitome of British middle-class life. His father, Basil Jagger, was a physical education teacher, an archetypal Englishman, disciplined, practical, intolerant of instability. His mother, Eva, once an amateur singer, was gentler, but still believed music was a pastime, not a path. The family hoped Mick would land a respectable job, wear a well-fitted suit, own a stable home, and lead a life free of mistakes. And the boy, surprisingly, played the part well. Jagger was a good student, careful, mature. He even got into the London School of Economics, the launching pad of Britain's elite. No one saw in him a screaming frontman. No one imagined that behind those serious eyes was a heart suffocating under the weight of expectations assigned since childhood. Until the day he reunited with Keith Richards, his old primary school friend, a boy with a strange collection of American blues records and a grin that didn't care what anyone thought. They bumped into each other at Dartford train station in 1961, a joyful meeting that revealed they didn't just share childhood memories, but a smoldering love for Muddy Waters, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, music that wasn't considered respectable in Britain at the time. Songs that weren't in any syllabus, never played in schools, but sounded like a call from a world without parents, without etiquette, without limits. From that moment on, Mick Jagger was no longer the ideal child in his father's eyes. He started skipping classes, playing small pub gigs, hanging out with musicians, and writing songs, something his father dismissed as nonsense that won't put food on the table. But one thing no one could deny: Jagger knew how to command attention. His voice wasn't classically beautiful, but he had a presence that made it impossible to look away. That piercing gaze, the arrogant head tilt, and a fire within, as if the good boy of yesterday had made it his mission to destroy every expectation ever forced upon him. No one had abandoned him. No one had hurt him, but no one truly understood what he wanted, except Mick himself. He didn't run away from home. He didn't argue with his father. He just quietly walked off, down a path his family could never follow. And perhaps that silence was the most radical act of rebellion of all. Early career. It started with just a few young men gathering in a tiny London flat, playing old American blues records that most of Britain still deemed dirty and unfit for radio. There was no manager, no roadmap, just raw guitars, unfinished vocals, and desires on the verge of exploding. But from that chaos, something began to take shape. Not just a band, but a cultural earthquake, the Rolling Stones. If the Beatles offered a polished, charming, lovable image, then the Rolling Stones, led by Mick Jagger, deliberately chose the opposite. They didn't ask to be loved. They demanded to be different. No suits, no slicked back hair, no sweet lyrics. Jagger walked on stage with a swagger that was half threat, half seduction. No smiles, no bows. And once he began to sing, the audience didn't just listen. They were pulled into a world they didn't even know they craved. In 1965, I Can't Get No Satisfaction exploded like a bomb. Keith Richards' iconic riff blared like an alarm. But it was Jagger, with his moaning, ravenous voice, who made the song an anthem of frustration. I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Not just about sex, but about society, advertising, the programmed life. Radio stations hesitated, newspapers raged, but the youth, suffocating under post-war norms, screamed the chorus back like a personal rebellion. Next came Paint It Black, a dirge soaked in grief, the first mainstream pop song to dive headfirst into death, darkness, and psychological unraveling. Jagger didn't sing like a poet, he screamed like a man who had lost everything. With the sitar's frantic wail and the unsteady heartbeat of the rhythm, the track became a perfect soundtrack for a generation lost in war and counterculture. Then came Under My Thumb, controversial for its lyrics, hinting at domination over a woman. But in Jagger's hands, it wasn't the song of an abuser. It was the voice of someone reclaiming control after being manipulated. On stage, he performed it like a psychological game. A flicker of contempt, a dash of pleasure, and a sense of danger that made it impossible to look away. Every lyric, every movement, every glance, Jagger never aimed to please. He aimed to provoke, not through political slogans, but through instinct, through body, sexuality, and the simmering restlessness within every young person trapped in a civilized society. In a time when sex wasn't spoken about, he took the stage like a creature who needed no permission, belting out what everyone else was still hiding in the dark. And it was that shamelessness, that unfiltered rawness, that created an irresistible pull. Mick Jagger wasn't just singing, he was giving birth to a generation. Career success. The 1970s weren't just the golden era of the Rolling Stones. They were the years Mick Jagger transcended his role as lead singer to become a living symbol of global rock. But he didn't do it by grabbing power. He did it by making everything revolve around him. Sticky Fingers, 1971, with its provocative tight jeans and working zipper on the album cover, kicked off a decade where the Stones weren't just selling records. They were selling attitude. Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, Can't You Hear Me Knocking. These weren't songs made to fit a formula or compromise on content. They were raw, seductive, and laced with menace, just like Jagger in that era. Part philosopher, part hedonist. By the time Exile on Main Street, 1972, dropped, the Stones weren't just a band, they were a religion. Recorded in the basement of a rented house in the south of France, surrounded by cigarette smoke, hard liquor, heroin, and nameless drifters, the album was organized chaos, madness conducted by a man who knew he was grinning while steering straight through hell. Jagger wasn't just performing anymore, he was leading. He dictated set lists, curated the band's image, orchestrated media strategy. As rock morphed into an industry, Jagger didn't reject the role of businessman like many of his peers who clung to the illusion of artistic purity. While Keith Richards spiraled through addiction and artistic obsession, Jagger negotiated contracts, protected the Stones' brand, and turned the band into an untouchable institution. That was when the cracks began to show. Keith sarcastically dubbed him Your Majesty, mocking what he saw as a man who had forgotten his roots. The tensions simmered through the 1980s, boiling over when Jagger released his solo album She's the Boss, 1985, refusing to tour with the Stones in favor of his own spotlight. Richards retaliated with Talk is Cheap and, years later, scathing words in his memoir Life, where he painted Jagger as a cold manipulator, part genius, part loner, someone no one dared get too close to anymore. Yet the audience never turned away. Even as critics accused Jagger of commercializing rock, he retained that primal allure, the kind of man you couldn't take your eyes off, even if you no longer loved the music. In 2003, when Queen Elizabeth II knighted Mick Jagger, the press split in two. Some hailed it as a long overdue honor. Others called it a betrayal of the rebellious spirit he once embodied. Even Keith Richards publicly disapproved. I don't think rock and roll needs a knight. But Jagger, as always, didn't argue. He accepted the medal, neither smug nor humble. Just with that familiar faint smile as if to say, "Don't think I've changed. I just learned to play the game better than you." Scandals and rumors. From the very beginning, Mick Jagger understood a brutal truth. In rock and roll, sometimes you have to be hated just to survive. In 1967, he was arrested for drug possession during a party at Keith Richards' home. The press swarmed. Society condemned him. But a now famous editorial in the Times, titled "Who Breaks a Butterfly on a Wheel," flipped the narrative, turning Jagger from a criminal into a counterculture icon. From that moment on, scandals didn't destroy him. They fed the persona he had instinctively built, someone who never asked permission to rebel. He simply was rebellion. The sex scandals followed, relentlessly. According to biographies, Jagger allegedly slept with over 4,000 people. Models, singers, both men and women, aristocrats and unknown artists alike. Rumors of a gay affair with David Bowie surfaced, fueled by comments from Bowie's wife. Jagger never confirmed it, never denied it. He left the audience to imagine, and used that imagination as part of a half-century-long performance. In 1999, Jerry Hall filed for divorce after Jagger fathered a child with a Brazilian model. The tabloid storm that followed made him a fixture of gossip headlines. People labeled him a sex addict. He just smiled. To Jagger, sex was a language, and he had always known how to use that language to stay in control. But power breeds isolation. His relationship with Keith Richards deteriorated through the 1980s. Richards publicly referred to him as Your Majesty, mocking Jagger's growing dominance. Jagger's solo career widened the rift in the Stones, but he offered no explanations. He kept touring, kept signing deals, and stayed silent, like conflict was simply a natural feature of any empire. The most devastating blow came in love, late in life. In 2014, Loren Scott, his partner of nearly a decade, took her own life in her Manhattan apartment. The media questioned, was he distant? Did he abandon her? Did he know she was depressed? Jagger gave no answers. He canceled the tour, released a brief letter, and vanished from the public eye. Close friends later revealed it was one of the rare times he truly fell apart. Years later, rumors surfaced that Jagger planned to leave none of his fortune to his children, instead donating it to charity. Half the public called it cold. The other half saw it as a tough love lesson from a father who didn't coddle, but left enough space for his children to step into life on their own. Mick Jagger has never begged for sympathy. He's never offered justifications. He lets it all pass, as if scandal is merely the side effect of freedom. And when backed into a corner, he still takes the stage, dancing, singing, smiling, as if nothing can touch what's inside. Maybe that's what makes him both dangerous and untouchable. Jagger doesn't avoid the dark. He knows how to live inside it. Personal life. Behind the lustful hip thrusts and provocative lyrics is a man who has loved deeply and lost more than a few. For Mick Jagger, love has never been a place of shelter. It's a high, a spark, a dangerous game he never quite wanted to pause for too long. His most iconic early romance was with Marianne Faithfull, the muse of swinging London, fragile as a ballad and turbulent as the music they lived in. They floated between luxury hotels and wild parties, wrote songs, smoked opium, and shattered every mold of what love was supposed to look like. It wasn't a sustainable relationship, but it was the overture to how Jagger would love for the rest of his life, fiercely, uncontrollably, and always leaving behind a trace of haunting allure. His only legally recognized marriage was to Bianca Jagger, an infamous 1971 wedding in Saint-Tropez, where the entire showbiz world showed up. The bride wore a white dress with no underwear, and the groom arrived late because the pre-party went too long. That glamour faded quickly in real life's cold daylight. Bianca once said, "No one can marry Mick Jagger and expect him to be faithful." The marriage ended after 7 years, fading as coldly as it once burned bright. With Jerry Hall, the radiant Texan model with inexplicable patience, Jagger came closest to something like family life. They were together for over 2 decades, had 4 children, and were once seen as the definition of rock and roll stability. But Jagger strayed again. A child with another woman surfaced, and Jerry walked away like someone finally waking up, later marrying Rupert Murdoch in what seemed like a definitive farewell to youth. Then came Loren Scott, a towering, quiet, elegant fashion designer with whom Jagger's love appeared more grounded. No wild parties, few paparazzi photos, no public scandals, until the day she took her own life. That tragedy shattered the emotional shell Jagger had long protected. He didn't cry in front of cameras, didn't speak to the press. He simply canceled the tour, shut his mansion doors, and issued a brief letter. "I just can't understand what drove her to such despair." Those close to him said, something changed. He spoke less, became more guarded, and visibly aged. Jagger has 8 children with 5 different women, ranging from Jade, born in 1971, to Devereaux, born in 2016 when he was already 73. No one calls him a model father. He rarely appeared on family vacations, didn't attend parent-teacher meetings, wasn't the type to sit fireside on Christmas Eve. But he provided. He showed up at graduations. He supported artistic dreams on his own terms, quietly, without hugs, but not without responsibility. Perhaps deep down, Mick Jagger has never truly believed he could hold on to anyone. The stage is the only place he can control emotion, where he screams, dances, and reaches out to thousands without needing to know their names. But love, family, children, those things are too real, too close, and always left him feeling more vulnerable than he was ever willing to be. Legacy and influence. If there's one thing that makes Mick Jagger an untouchable icon, it's not just the music. It's the way he moves a crowd without ever needing to explain why. He doesn't have a classically great voice. He doesn't play an instrument. He doesn't write songs alone. But when he steps onto a stage, everyone else fades. His power isn't that of a typical artist. It's the force of a live wire. His body, lean, twitching like an electric current, becomes a conduit of emotion, a spin, an offbeat jump, a backwards kick. Every movement forms a stage language that can't be taught, only imitated. Jagger doesn't stand firm like Freddie Mercury, doesn't scream like James Brown, doesn't throw microphones like Axl Rose. But he holds every eye in the room because each motion carries an unspoken command. Don't just watch me, lose control with me. That style birthed an entire generation of successors who openly acknowledge his influence. From Steven Tyler of Aerosmith to Bono of U2, from Iggy Pop to Alex Turner of Arctic Monkeys. Even a pop hit like Moves Like Jagger by Maroon 5 in 2010 is proof that his name has become a noun in popular culture. No explanation needed. But Jagger's influence goes beyond performance. He was the first to turn a rock band into a brand, understanding media, image, licensing, and stagecraft long before personal PR was a concept. He commercialized the Rolling Stones without diluting their mythos, a feat few bands lasting over half a century can claim. More than that, he's one of the rare artists who is both fiercely hated and deeply revered. Critics have called him a control freak, a businessman in a rocker's clothes, a man who doesn't know when to stop. But the truth is, it's precisely because he never stopped that he became immortal. Rock and roll can't be defined by guitar riffs or lyrics alone, but by the way an 80-year-old man can still make an entire stadium rise to its feet with a single shrug. Jagger didn't invent rock. He never declared himself the leader of any movement, but he became living proof that sometimes what keeps a genre alive isn't the sound itself. It's a body that knows how to ignite it, live it, and burn it from the inside out. Life today. Some legends live on memory. Mick Jagger lives on movement. At 80, he doesn't recount past glories. He dances right past them, as if time itself were the only thing he's ever truly fought against. No final act, no farewell tour, just tireless steps and eyes still burning like the first time he stepped up to a mic. In 2023, Jagger and the Rolling Stones released Hackney Diamonds, their first studio album in nearly 2 decades, and the first without legendary drummer Charlie Watts. Doubts about age and creative fuel were quickly silenced. The album received glowing reviews, topped charts around the world, and Angry became a hit. Collaborations with Paul McCartney and Lady Gaga left no question. The Stones still had fire, and Jagger hadn't let go of the rhythm of the times. In 2024, the band launched the Hackney Diamonds tour across North America, one of the most successful tours of the year, pulling in over $235 million in just a few months. On stage, Jagger remained a timeless warrior, leaping, sprinting, dancing as if the stage were the only place where time didn't exist. Tour clips spread like wildfire online, and the question kept resurfacing. How can an 81-year-old man still sing, move, and ignite tens of thousands of people every night? Yet behind the blazing lights, 2024 also marked a quiet shift. The band announced a postponement of their 2025 European tour due to logistical reasons, the first time in years the Stones stepped back from the international stage. Without the roar of crowds, Jagger returned to a London studio, writing and recording over a dozen new tracks, with a release expected in late 2025 or early 2026. Once again, he returned to music's purest form, an artist who doesn't need an audience to exist, only sound to survive. On rare days away from the spotlight, he shares glimpses of a quieter life, walking by the sea, playing with his youngest son, just 4 years old, reading, laughing with bandmates. And when asked about his age, he simply shrugs. "I never thought I'd live past 40. Now every day feels like a weird little gift, and I haven't even unwrapped them all yet." No one knows how many more tours Jagger has left, or how many songs still wait to be sung. But if the day comes when he stops performing, it won't be because he's tired. It'll be because he's already left so much of his energy on stage that there's simply nothing more to prove. Mick Jagger doesn't live to be celebrated. He exists to challenge everything once believed to be unshakable: age, fame, judgment, even gravity itself. While most of his generation have stepped quietly into the wings of memory, he still walks onto the stage, arms raised like the conductor of a world that only exists in the roar of rock and roll. Jagger has never stopped, not because he fears death, but because he's never known how to live without singing, without moving, without setting a stage on fire with just a glance. He's been labeled a national moral threat, arrested, condemned, betrayed, ridiculed. But he never explained, never backed down. He just kept going. And it's that defiance that made him immortal. With over 6 decades in music, Mick Jagger is not just the frontman of the Rolling Stones. He's the living symbol of something rare: restless vitality. Rock and roll has had many faces, many screams, but only one heartbeat that still pounds off rhythm and louder than ever. That is Mick Jagger. So if you've ever heard "Gimme Shelter" on a rainy night, ever felt a chill watching him move to "Start Me Up," or smiled seeing that iconic hip shake still alive after 8 decades, drop a comment below. How did you first discover Mick Jagger? And what song made you realize that rock and roll isn't just music? It's the human way of resisting decay. If this story made you want to dust off an old vinyl, or even just made your heart beat a little faster, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, so we can keep the fire burning for those restless souls who never sleep.